super happy that we both made time this Saturday to connect. And I also wanted to record this conversation of ours because I almost every time we have a conversation and it's so free flowing and we discuss so many interesting, at least for me, and new topics, which most of the time have to do with spirituality, energies, self-regulation, emotionally. It's just so many insights that I get out of just talking it out with you and hearing your perspective that I felt like it would be so good to record this and share this on our social media platforms. We've been friends now for about 2 years. I think you are my spiritual sister for sure, just because a lot of practices that we've done together, or a lot of things that you've taught me or shared with me, really just brought me so much further on this self-discovery, self-awareness journey that I'm going through. And so that's why I wanted to have this conversation with you. So maybe first you could just share really briefly the practices that you're into,
Sure.
your past, and then we're going to start talking about the topic that we wanted to discuss.
Yeah. No, that sounds great. So, I have a background in theater and performance, but I did my first teacher training in 2017, in which I went to India to do it with my partner, and pretty much since then I've been teaching and learning and growing. I did my first training in Ashtanga, which is a very dynamic form of yoga, but from there, I've kind of started taking on the softer, the meditative, the yin, the cooler practices. So that's mostly what I'm teaching, but I do a lot of hatha, and I combine a lot of yoga nidra practices to heal and towards healing practices. So
What I wanted to talk to you today and kind of get your perspective on it and maybe share mine, what's been helpful to me, because I think in the last probably already couple of years, collectively, we went through so much hardship. And I think everybody went through a lot of external changes in the world, but also that came with so much change internally, right? And I think through those times, and especially such a prolonged period of time of so much uncertainty and instability in the world, that comes with so much more of trying to understand who you truly are, what your values are, what is the most important, but also emotionally, it's very taxing and draining. And sometimes you get to this place that it's pretty dark and it's very difficult to come out of it, just because, again, there is no sense of stability. There is probably this ever changing sense of self also that starts with feeling so uncertain about the world. And so within that, I thought it would be great to talk about how do you get out of this negative headspace whenever you get into it. And if it's not something that you can get out of right away, and if it's a prolonged period of time, let's say a week or a month or even a year, and it just feels harder and harder to get yourself out of that, I thought maybe we can share our ways of dealing with that.
for me, because especially in the past year with the pandemic, there's definitely been ups and downs. One day you're like, oh, this is a great day. And the next day you're like, I don't know what happened. Like, how did I end up feeling like this? And if it goes on for too long, in my opinion, for me, it's a sign that I'm not staying connected to the present moment in a way. I am too much in the past. I'm contemplating something that happened that I'm still working on instead of just letting that go, because I can't change the past, right? Or I'm in a potentiality, a future that may not, turn out in a certain way, and I'm not connected to what's happening right now. What's happening right now, if I really tap into that, everything is fine.
I couldn't agree more. Actually, there's this one quote that I really love, that says, pain is unavoidable, but suffering is optional. And when you think
Yeah.
about suffering, I think it's exactly what you said. It's very much tied into, it's rarely tied into a present moment. And most of the times it's either something that's already happened in the past, and it's either our perception or interpretation of that, or just, again, certain things that we haven't worked through just yet, or just cannot let it go, or it's all the anxiety about the future and how that's going to go, and this future potential pain we might go through just because of what happened in the past or just because of our crazy imagination that's running wild. And so in that sense, I think reminding yourself that right now I'm safe, right now I'm okay, right now everything is fine. And getting yourself out of that, I call it thought trance. I read it somewhere. It's like a never ending cycle of just that thinking that's just unfolding and going crazy.
Yeah.
It's a spiral thing. And so being able to reconnect back to the present moment is the number one thing that can kind of remind you, like, look around, there's fresh air and it's a beautiful day,
Yeah.
and you're alive and all of those things. So it brings you to the place of gratitude. But so with that though, what are some practical things or practices that you do every single day or whenever you're in that headspace that help you to bring yourself back to the present moment?
Right. So, I mean, first thing is meditation, a practice that brings your awareness to your breath, a mindful practice, mindfulness, or where you really take the time to just, feel your surroundings, feel yourself. And journaling is another one that's really, really good. And affirmations, have a morning routine, something that just you can rely on every day. But meditation is one of those things that will carry you through hardships in a more objective way. You're not, you are not your suffering, but we feel like we are really our thoughts. We feel like we are the things we cannot change, but that doesn't define you. What defines you is, your reaction to something.
I personally also this year, more so even than the last year, have been going through this very um, strongly defined ups and downs emotionally. And sometimes this is, I think, the first time in my life where self-regulation has become such a necessity for me, because I naturally am a very optimistic person who loves life and who's like very easy to let go of things and be just grateful for everything that happens. And then I think with a lot of change in my life, personal, pre-pandemic, during pandemic, post-pandemic, it's
Mhm.
a lot of self-realizations came into play. And also it's really even just the sense of self and self-identity and how you see your life going forward, or how do you navigate through it right now,
Right.
has
Hmm.
become even more fluid than ever. And so it almost feels like you really have to learn to operate in a space where you don't have answers, and you might not have all the answers or most of your answers for a very
Right.
long time. And that's where, to what you said, I think it's so easy to fall into this mindset of a victim, right? Things are happening to me, and so until
Yeah.
these things stop happening to me, well, I'm going to be sad because that's the situation I'm in, right? And again, that's a
Hmm.
perception of situation, to what you said.
Yeah.
So I just read this recently, maybe like a couple of weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, that we do
Hmm.
operate just from two different mindsets at all times.
Hmm.
And so it's either a victim mindset, meaning things are happening to me, I don't have power over anything, even your reaction, and from the mindset of a creator. I create my life, I create or choose my reaction to every
Right.
single moment. And so that's your way of taking power back and saying, whatever is happening, whatever people are doing or saying to you, whatever situations are unfolding in front of you, you
Yeah.
have a control to how you react to it, or how do you interpret the events, or how you still choose to focus on things that you have to be grateful for. And that's what forms your energy and attitude to that situation.
Hmm.
And I think just that thought or belief alone helps me for sure. Like, that's something that I would share
Right.
with anybody who's going through any sort of emotional roller coaster or wave.
Something also that I've noticed with people is that the they can feel really, really down, but then they also get down on themselves for thinking that they're not validated to feel this feeling
Mm.
because someone else is suffering more. And your feelings on how you feel right now is not any less valid than them, but you're still going to have the same emotional chemical reaction in your body, because it's okay to feel down. It really, really is. And you need to allow yourself to do that, and you just step back and say, okay, I'm having a hard day, and I'm going to allow it. And that's okay.
I feel like also there is this almost huge stigma over not being negative and, in the general perception of it. It's almost like we're taught from a young age to repress certain emotions. Like negative emotions are bad, positive emotions are good, right? Like don't be
Right.
so weak when you
Hmm.
cry, like stop crying, or like certain things, right? And
Right.
sometimes they're even gender specific. And in that sense, like we teach that some emotions are bad, so you got to suppress them, you can't feel them. And so I think some of those negative space headspace periods that are
Hmm.
prolonged actually last that long because you've suppressed so much. And like you said, every emotion
Right.
or feeling, they do indicate something in you, right? And they're valid. What helps is the self-awareness and acceptance. And I think
Right.
with acceptance,
Hmm.
it just comes this sense of peace. And also with acceptance of any kind of emotions, I think you know that they're transitory. Like the essence of every emotion or feeling is it's temporary. So it's gonna go as long as you let
Yeah.
it flow through you. And as long as you're aware and
Hmm.
say, okay, yes, I understand that I'm feeling this way, because I think that's very important. Because otherwise, if you don't admit it, if you don't accept it, and you'll try to, again, either suppress it or fake it or like just
Right.
power through it without attending to it and identifying that also as something that you said, right? You're not your emotions, and putting that distance between you and that emotion
Mhm.
is so powerful. Because when you are so self-aware that this is what I'm feeling, that's gonna go. I know
Right.
I'm feeling this, but I'm gonna, try and feel better later.
Mhm.
That puts that distance, and so you stop identifying yourself with that thought or that emotion. And so in that way,
Right.
it's easier to let it flow through you because you know it's just going to pass and it's okay. And so I think
Hmm.
that level of self-acceptance and non-judgment for yourself, that's what also helps you be less judgmental towards other and more accepting towards others as well,
Right.
because if you go through this and that's how you handle, that's how other people are also going through that as well. And I think we need more of that for sure. But it's not an easy thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. And I actually talked about this earlier this morning with someone. How this is why I love yoga and meditation, because you do learn to separate yourself. You learn to experience your body instead of being in a state of judging your body. You're not meant to, adapt the body for the pose, but the pose for your body, your unique self. And with meditation, you learn to, observe instead of commenting and judging and all these things. You kind of just learn to take a step back. I really like to use this metaphor in a sense that you are in a line to the store, and then you step out of the line and you kind of observe the line. So your thoughts and everything that's going on is a line, and it's kind of like always always filling up. There's always a line. And then you step out, step outside, and you can observe it. And you don't have to be in the line. It's okay. Just take a step back and then go back and then come out, in a
Right.
way, if that makes sense.
It does, it does. I actually have read a similar metaphor to the same kind of,
Mhm.
practice of putting the distance between yourself and your thoughts. And imagine
Mhm.
yourself every time you're having those thoughts, especially like very repetitive and nonstop. Imagine yourself sitting
Right.
in a group of people. And so just think that your thoughts, you can read thoughts of other people. So it's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
don't attach yourself to a thought in your mind as being yours and a part of you, but just
Right.
understand that a lot of different things will go through. And so imagine
Mhm.
that it's not yours and you're reading minds of other people. And I know it might not help everybody, but it helped me also to just like visually imagine that distance between you and your thoughts, because sometimes you do judge yourself for your thoughts too, and
Oh,
if you
yeah.
start judging yourself for
Absolutely.
your thoughts, that means you think that whatever you think you are. And so in that sense, visualizing that distance in whatever metaphor that works for you,
Whatever metaphor that works. Yeah. No, for
uh,
sure.
really helps. But you know what I was going to ask you? So on the journaling, because I've been kind of doing it on and off myself, and I've tried different kinds or ways to journal. And I also know some people have been trying, and it's very difficult to become consistent at it. And also, there might be different ways to do it, right? So, do you have any examples or advices on what kind of journaling and how consistent, and whatever format
Right.
that you do that in, is it like very specific or not, that you feel like the most beneficial?
Right. So I like to not limit myself to words. If you feel like drawing when you wake up, or even if you feel like recording a little bit of a song or whatever, maybe you play instruments, that's still an expression of you. There is ways to, you know, there's techniques to do this too. But I kind of like being consistent with doing it every morning, and then whether it's like random words like word spitting, or it's a painting or whatever it is, something that you feel like you want to get out on paper.
Mm.
Dream journaling is another one that I'm big fan of. So you wake up, first thing you do is you just write down your dreams. And it's hard to not necessarily remember your dreams, because people are like, oh, but I don't dream, I can't remember. And true, there are some cases where they actually they can't visualize a dream or an image. But in reality, most people just forget their dreams, because you'll get out of bed and then you'll think about your next thing, the next thing you're going to do. But when you sit down to remember and reflect on your dreams, and once you start, you'll find that you remember more. And it should be the first thing you do before you look at your phone, before anything else. You should sit down. You should sit down and write out your dreams, and you'll find that the text will become longer, and it's really fun. And you're like, oh my god, did I really dream that? That's so weird, but also really interesting. Can't believe that came out of my head.
What I've tried this year, I haven't been very consistent with it, but what that technique helps me, and it's a literally 2-minute exercise with journaling in the morning. What that helps me to do is kind of denoise my mind, because I feel like a lot of a reason why we get into that negative headspace is because of just too much noise, and it's very difficult to filter through and to calm your mind and just
Right.
find that peaceful space, just because there's so much going on and you feel like you're just scattered. And so
Right.
I found this exercise, and there are 3 questions that you answer every morning. And the first question is, what am I grateful for this morning? So it's just a good first question, and I think it's very kind of popular one that everybody uses. The second
For
one is,
sure.
what am I going to let go of today? And I feel like that alone already makes you filter through, okay, what it is that's really, because intuitively you'll know what bothers you a lot in your mind, and you know that it's not
Mhm.
productive. Like it's something that you do wish you let go. So by verbalizing that and putting it in writing or even speaking that out, it really helps you. Okay, that
Right.
is so. So it's almost like a process of letting go. And then the third
Mhm.
question is, what am I going to focus on today? So now that you let go of the thing that's bothered you the most, then you focus, okay, what it is that I really want to
Right.
cultivate in my mind today. And so on the mornings when I was doing that, and then I would go back and see every single day, I was like, wow, that is so powerful, because I do think I succeeded in that throughout the day, because that becomes your little like mental note, right? If that thought
Yeah.
I wanted to let go comes, you're like, oh, no, 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 I decided to let it go. It's okay, go. And then on the other,
Yeah.
if something that you decided to focus on, you're just like, it cultivates that in your mind. So it's almost like setting this intention for your mind map throughout the
Right.
day. And I feel like
Mhm.
it's a very powerful denoiser of all that's happening in mind.
And as I think it was Jim Quick said that, you have someone eavesdropping, like your self-talk is being heard by yourself. Like the body doesn't, the body's not able to differentiate as an event that's happening in your head versus reality. Your body's going to react the
What you're talking about is what I keep
same.
referencing other people that I read, but like I read so much and watch so
Oh,
much,
cool.
and I stop myself. Like none of this content is original, so I need
No,
to
it really isn't.
I need to put a
That's the
disclaimer
point
out
there.
there. But Tony Robbins calls it priming, and basically what he has like a whole morning routine that is aimed at exactly that, to access your mindset and your emotional regulation through physical. So he has certain
Right.
routines that are very physical oriented, whether it be a certain workout or like contrast shower, like whatever that is. And so he goes
Right.
through it because those things change biochemistry of your body. Like within a minute, it doesn't even take like 30 minutes. It's just 1 minute of specific physical activity changes biochemistry of your body. And when all of our
Right.
emotions and our feelings, it's all biochemistry. So that way you can prime yourself, what he calls, into a very different mindset versus if you woke up and felt kind of tired,
Mhm.
negative and down, and just kept laying down in that bed and keep going into that cycle. Or
Yeah.
you're like, okay, I cannot just change my attitude to the situation right now. So let me go and access that mindset through physical aspect of
Right.
my body. And I find it so powerful. And again, it has to do with something that we talked about in the beginning of the conversation. Sometimes just going for a walk, fresh air, just really connecting with the nature
Mhm.
brings you in such a different perspective, because all of that again affects you on the physical level too. And
Yeah.
then another thing, like you said, also, our body doesn't know the difference between a situation that we create in our mind and situation that happens actually. And that's where anxiety comes in, and all of these future scenarios that we run through our mind. And so the trick here, and I think that I watched on Mel Robbins' page, who is also
Oh,
the
cool.
speaker,
Yeah.
so I will need to like leave all of these people's names just in case. And so what she says, whenever you get into a fearful state or you get anxious about something,
Mhm.
the way our body processes or reacts to fear is the same way we do react to excitement. So whenever she has those
Right.
speaking events in front of like thousands and thousands of people, and even though she's done it
Mhm.
for like years and years, she still gets very anxious right before she comes out on the stage. And so what she does is she keeps repeating, I'm excited. I'm so excited to do this, because
Yeah.
the way we feel excitement is exactly the same way when we're afraid or get anxious about, worry about things. It's like a very similar feel of like
Yeah.
butterflies, like all of that stuff. And so you start believing it. How did you get into the meditation?
How I got into meditation. For me, really, the bridge was in yoga. So it was, if you've ever practiced yin, you know that you hold the poses from 3, 5, even up to 8, 10 minutes sometimes. And it's passive and still, and there's no muscular, engagement. You're meant to kind of stretch your fascia and put some healthy stress, and tension on your joints, ligaments. And for me, being still like that for like 3 minutes, 5 minutes at a time was very hard, because when you do become still, your mind just starts going 1,000 kilometers an hour with thoughts. So I really learned to focus on the sensations in my body and be still. And then the next post might give me something else. Maybe the body is not the prevalent experience. Maybe there's sounds around me that I can put my attention awareness to, or even the temperature of the air or my breath or anything. But that was a really, really efficient way for me to get used to sitting with myself.
Even though sometimes you won't feel like meditating or your meditation's not going to go well, or yoga, there's still so much value and so much power in keeping showing up for yourself, because
Mhm.
just that alone makes you feel like
Yeah.
you took the time, you put in the effort and intention into feeling better. And that alone consistently can make you feel better, even if you're not that great at,
Yeah.
meditating yet and kind of like letting your thoughts finally go.
Yeah.
Just showing up for yourself is such a strong act of self-care. And I think with
Mhm.
that, you come to, again, the two mindsets that we talked in the beginning. You move from the victim mindset into the creator mindset. I create, regardless of how I feel, what happens, blah, 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 all the daily influences. I choose to create this space for myself where I show up for myself and I say, I love you, even though you're not your best right now. You want to just go and hide uh, and still be there with yourself and for yourself, because this expectation we somehow I think internally have, that someone's going to come and save us, somebody owes us, whether that be our parents or partners or friends or community or job or whoever,
Yeah.
boss. We have those expectations, and again, I think they come from this victim mentality that we're not responsible for what happens to us and it's out of our control, which to some extent true, it's out of our control. But again, what we do with it, how we interpret it, is totally under our control. Not easy, but I think again, it's just a daily practice of showing up for yourself in that way. Sometimes it's really easier said than done to, be accountable, take responsibility, get out of this negative mindset, blah, blah, blah. These are other things you can do. But
Right.
so in your perspective, after everything we've shared, what would be maybe the first thing to prioritize? And that would, in your mind, or in your opinion, shift that
Right.
reality for that person or perception of that very difficult reality.
Ooh, right. It's important to recognize that you have an emotional itch that can be triggered really quickly, especially if you're suffering and dealing with grief. So be kind to yourself, like genuinely be kind to yourself and take each moment as it comes, not each day, but each moment.
Mm.
It's a kind of a general thing, and but it's hard too because like I said, it's very individual. Every person will react differently, but recognizing your edge and honoring and respecting your space, your personal space, and the time you need to heal.
Right. Sometimes also just so many of us put pressure on looking a certain way and showing up a certain way
Hmm.
in a community and in front of other people that we care so much about that projected image that we put out versus how we actually feel that we don't want other people to see us that way. And so I think it
Right.
takes so much
Hmm.
of vulnerability to
Hmm.
go and actually say and admit like this is how I feel right now, this is where my life is at right now,
Right.
and that's okay. So again, I think we keep coming back to this self-acceptance and vulnerability and the power of it, and I think that's something that also comes, it doesn't come naturally to me because I almost,
Hmm.
since very young age I've had these very perfectionistic tendencies, and so with that it comes like I cannot be vulnerable, I cannot show that something's not right or I'm not feeling great. And I know now why,
Right.
so I worked through that. But it still takes
Right.
very intentional effort to, let's say, even call you and say, Isabella, I'm not feeling good, and cry with you or like do a meditation with you, because it
Right.
should come from a very honest and vulnerable place where you're not afraid to show that part of that state you're in.
Yeah.
And for some people more than others, it's a very difficult thing to do. So I would say connecting and not isolating is one of the biggest,
Mhm.
I think, mind shifts for me that I've had to arrive at. And that definitely makes me feel so much better.
And especially after months and months of mostly spending all your time in your home, I think connecting and just hugging another human being is going to be, you know, quite an experience for everyone these days.
We can always self hug.
What's that?
Always self hug. It's a
Always self hug. Yes. Self
it's a
hug is
very
great.
COVID friendly exercise.
That's, yeah, you're quite right about that. That is probably one of the best COVID friendly exercises. Self massage.
Well,
Yeah.
I really wanted to thank you for this conversation. I love you. I'm going to send you the
Oh,
part.
I love you too.
Look, that